I didn't expect this book to hit me the way it did, but Fredrik Backman has a talent for sneaking emotional gut punches into books that seem simple on the surface. Today we're talking about My Friends by Fredrik Backman. This is a novel that covers art, grief, and memory, and the way that people stay with you permanently even when they're no longer there. Disclaimer, this is a full discussion on the book. If you haven't read it, just keep in mind that there may be spoilers. So today we're going to talk about the plot, the author's writing style, the themes that stood out to me, the quotes that I highlighted, and the questions that just really stood out to me long after I turned the last page. I gave this book 5 stars, so let's get into it. So if we're going to talk about the plot, we're going to start with Louisa. She is the bridge between the past and the present. She is a 17-year-old runaway from the foster care system, and she has snuck into a church to view a painting. A painting that she has had as a postcard in her pocket for a long time. This painting is called One of the Sea. It is, at first glance, just a bunch of ocean, but if you look closer, you can see some kids near the pier having fun and laughing. This is absolutely her favorite painting ever. So she sneaks into a church to an art auction to see this painting in real life. And when she gets caught, she gets thrown out, and she hides from the cops, runs from the cops. She runs into this guy in an alley. He appears to be homeless and is very sick. So it turns out this man is actually the artist behind Louisa's favorite painting. They start chatting, and they also graffiti the side of the church. Because Louisa was on the run from the cops, they eventually catch their attention because they're graffitiing the side of a church. So Louisa runs, the artist gets caught in her place, but they don't arrest him because someone says who he is, and they don't arrest famous people for doing art. So Louisa takes off, and he gets caught, and he gets taken to the hospital because he's very, very sick. So that night, the artist actually passes away from his illness, and he tells Ted, his childhood best friend, that he needs Louisa to have this painting. The painting she was admiring in the church, One of the Sea, is actually the artist's first painting, and he drained all his accounts to buy it back before he died. He has chosen to give it to Louisa and told Ted, his childhood friend, it is your job to get it to her because she is, as he said, one of us. So Ted takes this responsibly, and he finds Louisa, tries to give her the painting, but he underestimates just how stubborn she is. The thing is, Louisa's not going to be able to sell this painting on her own. She's a 17-year-old who looks like she stole it. So Ted helps her sell the painting, or he says that he will help her sell the painting. They need to take the train ride home to a hometown where he knows of someone who deals with selling art. She has managed to wrap him into this adventure to go back home to sell the painting. During the travels, the book does jump from present day to the past when the painting was done, but don't let that fool you. I thought I had it all mapped out, but the end does have some surprises for you. The author's style choices. The first thing that I noticed when reading this book was the author uses a lot of commas. That's fine, it's a stylistic choice, but it's just something to kind of get used to. The chapters, they are fairly short, but don't let that mislead you. This is not a bingeable book. There's a lot of grief and trauma and loss, and it's definitely something that you need to digest. You're not going to finish it in one night. There's a lot of humor in the story. There is a lot of jokes between the kids. There's a lot of quick-witted banter. There's a lot of childish humor. And the kids themselves give off the same vibes, so I'm not surprised that they're friends, even though their personalities are polar opposites. And by page 2, I had already decided that I liked the author's hate society humor. Topics I want to talk more about, or just themes that I thought were important. Number 1, I do not stand for Louisa's hate on dogs. She mentions that she hates them because they're always first to be shot in a movie. I find that an interesting take because the majority of this book revolves around a friend's loyalty, and nobody is more loyal than a dog. I'm actually kind of wondering if this was planted early in the book so you can see Louisa's development and her opinion on loyalty, or if the author just really hates dogs. In regards to loyalty, I feel like Jorah's loyalty is really overlooked. He mentions that the artist won't need him when he's older. He will need Ted because Ted's loyalty is a superpower. However, he won't need Jorah because the artist won't need protection when he's older. Really, I see Jorah as loyal. This is not to say that Ted isn't loyal. I feel like we've just really diminished the loyalty in Jorah, but he would do anything for his friends despite the consequences. Next up, rough childhoods do not define your adulthood. You can have a rough childhood and still have a happy life as an adult. Ted goes on to mention that the slow mornings and the little things that wasted time were actually the highlights of his adulthood while living with the artist. Now this kind of ties into my first point, but I was scrolling TikTok and I came across this TikTok.
There's one thing that dogs do better than anything on this planet. They celebrate absolutely everything. If you grab your keys, celebration. Open the fridge.
This TikTok literally goes over how dogs celebrate everything, even if it's the smallest of things. Which is why I find it so odd to drop that little bit of dog hate at the beginning, because they literally stand for everything that you just mentioned was good about adulthood. So if we want to get specific about the theme, it could be adults who had a rough childhood trying to help children who are going through a rough childhood, almost like a pay it forward motion, because we see Christian helping Kim Kim, Kim Kim helping Louisa, Louisa helping the next kid. You could also argue that it is specifically artists fighting to keep artists together and give them better lives that is also being filled in this book. Another theme is you can get through anything if you have one good friend. This quote is actually from Ginny and Georgia. I just finished season 3, so it's kind of on my mind, but I feel it applies to this book. One quote that really supports this statement is, "Would you swap those 2 years for a whole childhood? A happy childhood, only with different friends?" I wouldn't have swapped those idiots for 1,000 childhoods. This quote shows that the value of our relationships can make an experience worthwhile. Despite having a rough childhood, the kids made bonds that were irreplaceable. Something so great came out of someone who thought so little of themselves. This is another quote which shows the importance of having a support group. The self-confidence of the artist was so low, yet he was still able to achieve more because of the support of his friends. Next up, I want to discuss main character versus hero, anti-hero versus villain. So the boys at one point are in the basement and they're discussing superheroes. That's how this comes up. So Jor mentions that the main character and the hero are not the same thing. Now this is something I never really considered, but the main character, that's whose perspective we're going to follow. It's their curiosity, their emotional lens, their understanding that we will be seeing. They're more of the entry point than the emotional origin, more of a witness than a savior. The hero is whose choices shape the emotional core of the story. Perhaps in this story, we're going to see it more through showing up, staying, and protecting. Louisa is always denying that she's the main character. She believes that it's more her friend Fish. Ted, however, told her that Fish is maybe more the hero in the story. There is a lot of self-realization happening in this dialogue. I, for one, often lump together the main character and the hero into the same mold. But that is not the case. In this book, Louisa is more of a main character, but she is the reason that the heroes are not forgotten. They also dive into like an anti-hero versus villain, and we see that when Jor says evil is evil, you can't balance it out with a few good deeds. The anti-hero is someone who's operating based on pain or love, not cruelty. They may make some bad decisions, but the decisions are made from survival, not malice. A villain is someone who's going to act out of cruelty and control, deliberately trying to hurt someone, and would not choose differently if given the option. In this book, the author, he doesn't like using villains. He prefers to use the anti-hero, people who are acting on survival, people who just were not shown any different. And I feel like maybe that's done, maybe so we don't just forgive everybody, but maybe just look a little bit closer about who really deserves the label of villain. In this book, they really paint grown men as predators, but I just want to remind you that we do see Ted, the artist, Jor, all grown men who aren't predators, and the ones who are predators just tend to overshadow the ones who aren't. Jor was good at mending engines because in them you can always see what was broken, but humans are full of crap you can't see. We break in the invisible parts. Being human is to grieve constantly. That is unfortunately true. Once upon a time, church bells used to ring for the dead. Now it's telephones, and the more they ring, the more important the person was. When a world-famous artist dies, phones ring on every continent. People talk about him on the news. People who have never met him cry. Art is so big, so unfathomable, that it teaches us to mourn for strangers. Angry at himself, angry at the artist, but most of all angry at death for having such good taste, always taking the best first. It's strange the things you remember from your childhood, but perhaps what you forget is even stranger. The most dangerous place on earth is inside us. This is when the teacher is bullying the artist and Jor is telling him that he doesn't need help hating himself. People always say you should live as if every day was your last, but when you have children, you realize that you have to live as if every day was their first. You can't love someone out of addiction. All of the oceans are tears of those who have tried. We're not allowed to die for our children. The universe won't let us, because then there wouldn't be any mothers left. It was like we gathered up 100 days of memories all at once. If I lay them all out, I think I've got enough to make a happy childhood. This is Louisa talking back on the memories of the snowball fight with Fish. Again, she didn't have a happy childhood, but she has enough glimpses of happy moments to make it worthwhile. And the last one, she said it didn't matter if we lived to be 80 years old, because that's a billion different nows. And one really good now is enough. And now refers to like a happy moment or a good memory. And this was a quote from Fish. So she's saying that As long as you have one good, happy memory, it makes it worth the pain of living. Now we're going to do the questions that I thought of after I read the book and the ones that stayed with me. Number 1, has anything spoken to you the way that the painting of the sea spoke to Louisa? Has it been like a painting, a song, a movie, a book, anything like that? Are we destined to follow in our parents' footsteps? This is more Jor versus his dad. That's what made me think of this question and how much of it is controllable and how much of it isn't. Is it still an unhappy story if it has a happy middle? What makes an unhappy story? Does it need to have like an unhappy ending? Where do we draw the line? Is being remembered more important than being understood? Is art meant to explain pain or just to hold it? My Friends is a quiet, reflective novel which doesn't demand attention, it earns it. It's for the readers who love character-driven stories, emotional depth, and if you like a book that just sits in your chest long after you read it. If you've read this book, let me know in the comments down below, what did it mean to you? Who was your favorite character and did it hit home for you? Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed this video, you can comment down below, you can like this video and subscribe, and I will see you in my next video.